On the rocks, or neat, or maybe an old-fashioned like me. Folks, whiskey is back to stay.
And more bourbon and rye distilleries are popping up and cashing in. Marlie Hall visited one in Brooklyn, New York that's trying to keep up with the growing thirst.
Derek Slesselman has his own recipe for making good, strong whiskey, but he says the proof is in your mouth.
And very smooth.
Thank you very much. We're making whiskey like they made whiskey before Prohibition.
Slesselman opened the Van Brunt Stillhouse in Brooklyn in 2012.
We're growing fast and we're trying to keep up with demand.
In 2014, there were more than 1,800 active distilleries in the U.S. That's more than double the amount from 5 years before. Part of that boost is being fueled by small distilleries like Slesselman's, which makes a single malt, bourbon, and American whiskey. Lisa Hawkins of the Distilled Spirits Council says the U.S. is experiencing a global whiskey renaissance as sales of the spirit continue to climb.
One key reason for that is the renewed interest in the cocktail culture. Cocktails are back in the United States. They're exciting and they're fun, and the small craft distillers are playing into that trend.
Van Brunt Stillhouse is set to double its whiskey production this year and pump out 1,500 gallons of hooch.
I think the sky's the limit.
And Marlie Hall joins us now. Did you have fun doing this, sampling the whiskey?
So much fun. And it was so good. I wasn't a whiskey fan before, but now I am.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. In your piece, you say that they're doubling the production, Stillhouse whiskey, and that's because people are really into the craft distilleries now.
That's right. Cocktails are cool again.
Yeah.
Popular shows like Boardwalk Empire and Mad Men, they're really bringing that old-fashioned cocktail to the forefront. Back in the day when it was okay to have a bar in your office and serve people when they came to visit you. Those days are gone.
I'm keeping this in my office.
What's the difference between the craft and the regular?
Well, a craft distillery is really small batch.
Okay.
So the Distilled Spirits Councils, they define a craft distillery as anyone that makes less than 100,000 gallons a year. But craft has really become known as something that is locally sourced, where the distiller has a hand in everything from brewing to distilling to bottling and labeling.
What's interesting, too, is that this is rye whiskey. There are, in the United States and around the world, there are really distinctions as how to make whiskey. For example, Kentucky bourbon has to be made in Kentucky. Canadian whiskey has to be made in Canada. Scotch whiskey, which is actually spelled missing the E. That's
right.
how in Scotland, right? So, but here in New York, where they make this stuff, they can call it whiskey, and there's no problem.
That's right. They call it American whiskey. And under that whiskey header, there are different kinds. As you mentioned, bourbon. Bourbon is primarily corn in addition to grain. Now, rye is made with the rye grain, and then there's Scotch that's made in Scotland. So there's all different varieties of whiskey. I didn't know that before, that there are so many that fall under that header, but it's all whiskey.
But it was a smooth taste.
Oh, yes, but very strong. You have to be careful.
Okay.
Are you a bourbon drinker or a whiskey drinker?
No, I'm really not.
The greatest cocktail in the world is the Manhattan. And I'm going to
that's
have
what my
one
dad
with
used
this.
to drink.
That is the greatest cocktail in the world.
All right,
Now
Marlie
you know.
Hall.
Now you know.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks,
Thank
Marlie.
you.